Hi guys, it's Vivianne. Now that 2025 has started, I wanted to go over the books that I read in 2024. Compared to a lot of stuff that I see online, I did not read that many books. I read 6 books in 2024, which for me is actually a lot. It's definitely the most books I've read in a year since being in school. In high school and college, I didn't have a lot of outside time to read novels for fun. So I've been really excited to get back into that. So I'm gonna list off the books that I read and some descriptions about them, and then what I rated those books. The ratings are a little so-so, not very solid on my ratings. I don't feel like I have that many books to compare to, considering I'm like just getting back into my habit of reading. But let's get right into the books I read in 2024. The first book I read in 2024 was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the prequel Hunger Games book by Susan Collins. Growing up, I really liked reading the Hunger Games novels, so I was really excited to read this book. I don't think it was in my top books of the year, but if you enjoyed the other Hunger Games novels, I definitely think it's worth reading just because it's a continuation of that story. I also think there's a new one coming out either this year in 2025 or next year. Overall, I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars just because I don't think it really compares to the original novels. Those ones were just like so highly esteemed that I think it's a little bit hard to have the prequel like compared to that. It was also so much longer than all of the other books, which I was a little bit surprised by. Okay, the next book that I read was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I read this book during my last semester of college, so my brain was a little bit scattered. I think I could have used a little bit more brain space to really like understand what was going on in this book. I had so much fun reading it though. It was one of the first classics that I chose to read. Like, it wasn't assigned to me or anything like that. I didn't know how much I would enjoy reading one of the classics. I definitely rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. Just like the overall scenery and the vibes and the drama of it all were so good to me. And obviously it's just a very compelling story about being human, relationships, everything like that. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I would suggest reading it for sure. Okay, the next book that I read was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the book that Blade Runner is based on. I love the cyberpunk genre, sci-fi genre. I do fall into this pattern of not wanting to read anything or watch anything. Some of the themes in that genre are a little bit not my taste. Earlier in the year, I had tried to read Neuromancer, which is like claimed to be like the first cyberpunk anything. So I was really excited to read that, and then I was reading it and I literally couldn't because I was like, whoever wrote this doesn't care about women, but that's okay. So I stopped reading that in hopes that Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep would be more interesting, especially since I've seen Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. I thought I would really like it. It did still fall into a lot of the same misogynistic tropes, so I didn't really enjoy that, but the overall story was obviously incredible. And if you're going to read a book from that genre, I felt like this one was a little bit easier to read than Neuromancer, and that's kind of as far as I've gone into that for novels. Though my expectations were like so high for this book, so I ended up reading it a 2.5 out of 5 stars just because I felt like there was a lot of ableism, crazy wording, and just things that I didn't really like reading, so 2.5 out of 5. The next book I read, it's technically a play, was The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I started reading this in the beginning of fall. I really wanted something that was fall adjacent to read. I'm not really into fantasy, so I'm sure there's a lot of fall books, but I was thinking like witches, sorcery, curses, hexes, that kind of vibe. So it was really short. I read it super fast. I really enjoyed it. I would love to see the film adaptation. I think there's a film adaptation with Winona Ryder in it, and I really want to watch that. Reading this like really cemented my shift into wanting to read a lot more classics, so I really appreciate this book for, inciting that on me, because I've been enjoying all the classics that I've been reading so far. I rated this one a 4 out of 5. The story was honestly so crazy, considering it wasn't like a full-length novel or anything like that. I was just like, there's so much going on, and it was really crazy. And if you're into any sort of like witchcraft and the witch trials, anything like that, I definitely suggest reading The Crucible. Once I finished reading The Crucible, I read A Room of One's Own. This is technically an essay and not a novel, but I really wanted to include it. It was definitely a very interesting read. It's a feminist essay just about how being a woman is and making a way in the world for oneself. I think it's definitely important to read, especially in these, you could say, trying times for women. So I definitely think anybody who's interested in anything like that should read it. I think it was super well written, and it did inspire me to read more classics and female literature from that time. Considering it wasn't a full novel, it was kind of hard to compare it to the other books that I read. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 just because I think it's really an important message and such a difficult message, especially to share at the time, like writing about being a woman as a woman during a time when women couldn't write. And it was just such an important piece of literature, especially feminist literature. And it'll probably be part of the banned books list. So you should read it. I definitely would suggest reading it. Yeah. Okay. The last book that I read in 2024 was Jane Eyre. Probably so quickly to become one of my favorite novels of all time. I don't know what I thought was gonna happen when I read it, but like I immediately was like, this is one of the best books I've ever read. One of the biggest classic novels. I was really intimidated to start reading it, but once I got into it, I was just flying through it. The story's so compelling, and a lot of people are into stuff like Bridgerton, Downton Abbey, that area of fantasy, and I felt like this fit like right into that genre, obviously, because it's old and European. And so the story was so good. I was crying, laughing, living, loving. It was so amazing. I really suggest everybody to read this book. I think most people have, considering it's a classic novel. But if you haven't, or if you needed any reason to read Jane Eyre, I like really think you should. It made my heart like so full reading this book. It was just such an experience. I rated it a 5 out of 5 just because it was definitely my favorite book of the ones I read this year. I hope that I find more books like it, and I'm sure I will, but I'm just really excited to read more books like that now that I've like gotten out of my reading rut. I read a few books in 2023, but none of them really like made me want to read more. But reading Jane Eyre, I was like, I need another book right now. I need to keep reading stuff like this. Okay, so that was my complete list of books. I know it wasn't 70 billion books like some people do. Maybe one day I'll get there. I'm really jealous. Don't worry, it's not coming from a place of hate. I just wish I could do that. Overall though, I'm super proud of myself for reading the books that I did. My goal was to get to 12 books a book a month, and it didn't happen, but that just means I can have that goal for this year. And I'm really excited to hopefully be able to read even more. The book I picked for January of 2025 was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, and I'm so excited to read more books like that. So I'll keep you guys posted. Please recommend down below if you have any other books you think are just worth reading or that you think I would like. Yeah, that's my completed list for the books I read in 2024. I'm really excited to continue my reading journey in the new year. So see you guys next time. Bye.